Welcome to the Mission Driven Leader, presented by TaleoConnects.com, where we explore the new, unknown, and innovative themes for work and give people the ability to show up resilient every day. Here are your hosts, former Chief Knowledge Officer of NASA, Ed Hoffman, and partner and Vice President of Portfolio Management at Taleo, Laurel Sim.
Well, welcome to the Mission Driven Leader podcast. And Ed, I see that you've got this beautiful background that doesn't include anything to do with NASA. Have you changed who you are?
I'm in need of mental toughness, which is good because that's the session that we're talking about today. I'm between two homes. As you know, I'm moving to a new place, and I've left the place that we've been in, raising our family for 30 years. And truthfully, I'm confused. I'm stressed. I don't know where I am, and I look and I see nothing behind me, and I feel undressed, kind of.
Well, I see you're wearing a shirt, so I do appreciate that for the podcast. So thank you.
I just threw that on 5 minutes ago, just for you.
Yeah, it's interesting how mental toughness shows up in the most unusual of places that we would think maybe it doesn't need to be there because we're well prepared, well organized. Yeah. Moving homes, building homes, starting new jobs, all of those things where we feel we've got the skills, we've planned it out, those types of things. But at the end of the day, you'll find that one box that you know you need to throw out, but it has too many special memories, but you don't know what to do with it. And that's where mental toughness comes in. It really comes into allowing you the clarity to think things through, to show up a little bit differently each and every day, and make sure that you're doing it for the right reasons. And I'm definitely not an expert in this because my mental toughness usually includes maybe a scotch at the end of a bad work day. So. I'm the wrong girl for that topic.
No, you're always mentally tough. You're a provocateur. You like to shake things up for other people.
Yeah.
I've seen that.
Yeah, so I do.
Yeah, you have a big advantage today.
That's why I put curly hair on today, and it makes me a little bit tougher, more like rigid. Yeah,
absolutely.
Well, Ed, let's hop right into our guest today. I can't tell you how excited I am to chat with Heather. Heather Nedohin is, in my opinion, and I get to have it because it's mine, is an icon in Canada for curling. She has not only won numerous accolades nationally, but so has her husband in the world in curling. And most recently, their daughter of 16 won in nationals just this past weekend. So the opportunities are never ending with her and her family, including her daughter playing sports down in the United States for Michigan. They're just really a focused, committed community, not only within their family, but all of those teams that they bring together. Heather also does coaching for curling at the Canadian level. So that's why I thought this topic would be really in line with what she does on a regular basis, which is allows people to get out of their own heads and do the job that's at hand. And I do think that far too often we get in our own heads, right? Like right now you're like, oh my, I feel naked. Which I appreciate, again, that you're wearing a shirt. But Ed, that's a big deal for you, for when you were bringing people into NASA. NASA's a big name. Yeah. How do you make people just show up to what they're supposed to do?
Yeah, and as we get into this, it's a really good, important point, because we get comfortable. You and I have talked together for many years. We're comfortable talking to each other. We kind of take it maybe for granted. When people would join NASA, one of the things when you walk around NASA and office buildings, they have beautiful posters of rocket launches, of successes, of planets. You see people around the room who, are the best at what they do. And so it can be very intimidating, right? And so how do you get yourself prepared for being able to be the best in whatever situation that you're in? And I think all these things lead into this whole discussion of how do you prepare yourself for the challenges that are out there. So
absolutely. So that's why I think that today's topic is going to be so impactful to our listeners and both to Ed and I going forward. So Heather, welcome to our podcast. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah. So there's so many questions that are burning in my head, but maybe the first part is if we focus just on you and how you realize mental toughness had to be part of how you performed as an athlete. Maybe we could just kind of start in that realm.
Well, I thank you. So my passion was many sports. I grew up in a small community in northern BC, and it was just what I did for fun. I just played a ton of sports. My passion was volleyball, but we had Olympians come through our community and come to my school and show me an Olympic medal, and that enlightened me. I wanted to be an Olympian. And so when I went to college, I really hoped I would get a volleyball scholarship, and then I had to take a self look at myself. I'm 5'7". The chances of making the national team to go on, minimal. So the sport of curling was something I turned to when I realized I want to go to the Olympics. And through my journey through college, I was impacted by some amazing coaches that opened up my door to not just the physical side of the game, but to the mental side of the game. And when I went to the university at the U of A, one of very strong, influential individuals for me was Dr. John Hogg. And he was a sports psychologist for our Olympic swimming team. And as I sat as a student in his class, I just converted everything that Olympic, swimmer to a curler. What does a curler need to do? And to be honest, curlers at that time, we weren't really viewed as athletes. We were, on the side. So as I was training in the gym as a volleyball player, but I was a curler, they'd be like, I'd be in amongst these athletes and they're like, what are you training for? And I'd be curling. They kind of go like this to me. So there was that. And then there was the adding on the mental training. And as I have to be honest, I lost. As a junior, I lost. I came second, third, fourth, second, third, fourth. It wasn't until my final year, when I was in my final year of juniors, that we advanced on and became provincial champions, national champions, and then world champions.
Well, that's surprising to me, but I love hearing that failure created those steps in that journey of where you are today, because I think it's the failures that actually make us stronger, and I strongly believe that you become more focused inside when you do fail, and I must be like really focused, Ed, because I'm fantastic at failing.
Well, yeah, I want to come back to that because you're talking about disappointment of being second, third, and fourth. I would be thrilled, I think, at a certain point in time to be second or third in anything, and so I wonder about that. One of the things I've been watching a lot of is golf. And you see these people who end up in second place, and they're the best at what they do, but you see the frustration of not getting that number one spot. So how is it in your mind? Do you appreciate the fact that I'm second or third of something that few people can do? Or is it a frustration? Or is it this notion of failure doesn't seem like the right thing? But how do you see this notion of not getting the gold?
Well, I'm intrigued by the game. For me, it was, what can I learn and how can I respond and how can I get better at the next time when that situation would arise? I'm not going to repeat that mistake again. And so it was, I'm intrigued by losses. Our Oilers just had a devastating loss last night, and I'm curious of how they're going to reset, respawn. And that was me all the time. Like, to me, I was the small town girl going against the big dogs, and I was just always intrigued by it. And as my children go through major losses, as my husband said, he never won an event, no juniors, no nothing, until he was 27. And then when we see the success that our kids are having at this younger age, we're like, you got to enjoy the journey. You got to enjoy every, about it. Why do you show up to the rink? Why do you show up to the field? Why do you show up to work? You got to love it and learn from it.
I wanted to stop and just react, Heather, to one of the things I'm asked a lot about going back to my times at NASA is how do you deal with failure? And for NASA people, it's a very sensitive thing because we've, the history and all that kind of stuff. But it's a double-edged sword. And one of the things you said is that you like to learn from when things don't go right in order to get better. And I also think it's important to, what are we talking about? Is it a failure to end up second or third or to be one of the best at something in the world? Can we use it for fuel to get better? And so I'm just wondering your reaction of, is it failure or is it you're competing against yourself to be the best and not getting the number one spot is a way of learning to get better, a motivation to get better. And when you do get that, it's more of an appreciation as opposed to this notion of there's success and there's failure. It seems very binary to me. So
I think it always, to me, it's how you respond either the next day or the next week. And for us in sport is, do you lounge around in your bed and stay in your house? Or do you get up and respond and get back in the gym, get back onto the court, get back onto the ice? And are you analyzing, the tapes? How do you personally respond? And, I've seen individuals miss final shots in our curling world, and they don't compete the next year. Like they're devastated, they're down, they're out. And then I've seen, like personally myself, is I'm out on my bike and I'm like, instead of doing 10K, I'm doing 25 because I want to figure it all out so that I get better for the next time, whether it's mentally, physically, or emotionally. And so, for in sport, it can be life devastating because we lost the finals. But there's always that next journey and the next game and the next opportunity, especially in the sport of curling. Our journey, it can be, years, like, 40, 50 years of this. But most athletes work in the cycle of the 4 years with the Olympics. And the opportunity to be an Olympian is a very, very small group. And then, in our world sport, we are seeing repeat champions. And I think in my opinion, the top female mental toughness in our world is Jennifer Jones. When it came, as the pressure increased or the games got stronger or you got later in the ends, Jen responded. And it was exceptional to watch, but it was also very intriguing for me to play against her and try and bring out the best in her. And we battled and we had amazing games. And sometimes I won and sometimes I lost. But it was, for me, entertaining. Like, that's where I found it fun. And, not everyone finds that fun. I mean, I listened to my dad and he'd be like, how can you play that? Like, it was so stressful. The cameras, this, that. And I'm like, I never even noticed them, Dad. What? There was a large crowd? Like, what? You're so into it. You're enjoying the moment.
yeah, and that sounds like the mental toughness. You watch as a fan, you see athletes who are they're always under immense pressure because of all the focus. Seems like some of them, they can deal with failure and just move on the next day and just respond to it. And you see others who they don't enjoy the event itself anymore because of the potential for failure. So this is the mental toughness, and I'd like to hear the discussion. How do you build that? How do you get to the point? Is there a tip? Is there a way? Is there a mindset that you're able to appreciate what you're doing no matter what's happening, so that you can keep enjoying it over those 40 or 50 years? And same thing. I mean, yeah.
When I'm married to David Nedohin. He was part of the Furby Four, who had an unbelievable run for world championships in the men's side of curling. And there's a documentary on Netflix called Losers. And a part of that is, we have devastating losses, but how you respond and you come back to it. Most people forget those losses, right? They're like, oh, that's such and such, he's a world champion. And they forget that they lost some devastating games. And there was a pinnacle, two big pinnacles in the Furby Four, where they lost a national championship up 2 and gave up like 3. Like, it was, what? How does that happen? And David had an opportunity at the World, an open hit, simple win, and he hit and rolled out. And it was like, what? But those 2 shots, like, are just 2 out of hundreds or thousands that they made repetitively. And yes, you walk away from a devastating loss, and it takes some time, and everyone's timeline may be different, but those moments were pivotal moments to that team turning and continuing to be elite and world champions.
And so one thing that perks my interest when talking about that, Heather, is that in fact we often, people feel like they're defined by one moment or 2 moments. But to your earlier point about you have to participate in the journey, how do we help people to realize that you're not defined by this one moment, that it's just a chapter of which you get to participate? What do we help people do to think a little bit differently in regards to those areas?
I really think self-reflection, journalism, just really taking a check-in on yourself, and being not so hard on us as humans, as individuals at the different stages of our lives. If I reflect on Heather, who was 20, and Heather in her 30s, and Heather in her 40s, I'm a different individual. And I think, Laurel, you and I were talking about balance. Like, I look what I could accomplish in my 20s. Well, I wasn't a mother. I was committed to my education. I was committed to my, my journey as an athlete. But then I became committed to my journey as being a mom, and it's ever shifting. And it's actually fun for me to go back to my old journals, whether it's as an athlete or as a mom, and just reflect of all my ups and downs and ins and out. And you know what? I'm still on the path for myself, whatever that might be, and it changes all the time. So stop being so hard on yourself, realizing where you are in your stage of life, and whether you're moving, whether you're packing up, and my daughter's packing up right now, moving to another campus with school. We have different stages to which our performance can be.
So one of the things that I often, when I do business coaching, I often say, give yourself a little bit of grace here. You've been through a lot, whatever the challenge is that's hitting you right now. Without question, we're always hardest on ourselves, right? And so how we give ourselves a little bit of grace helps us to allow that it's just one moment and it didn't actually truly define us. Ed, do you have any examples in your life of where, you forgot to give yourself a little bit of grace?
Yeah, no, I like to use the word journey a lot. And it wasn't something that I was conscious of, but I use it a lot to the point where people have mentioned that. And for me, I think I use the word because, like in a movie is always filled with, you have this tremendous goal that you're shooting for, and you're going to fail. It's built in to the storyline. And for me, when I got to NASA, at different points, I'd feel tremendous pressure. One, like, how did I get in here? I thought it was somewhat of an accident of fate for me to have ended up at NASA. I got there as an organizational team psychologist working around learning and development. I can't screw in light bulbs. I don't know math. I didn't dream about going to. I knew I would never end up at NASA, right? And I'm at this place where people dreamed of it their whole lives, the engineers and the scientists. So at the first point, when I first got there, I was quiet. And I was deliberately quiet because I felt if I was quiet, people assume that you know something. And let's not say anything and prove them wrong. And I was giving a presentation very early in my career. And truthfully, I think the previous night I'd been drinking a little too much. And I had a headache, I wasn't feeling that great. And I just started saying what was on my mind. And when it ended, I felt, you were a little bit too unstructured and you're kind of a little too, too blunt or something like that. You got to watch that. And I remember a woman, one of the leaders, came up to me saying, that was the best presentation, best session you ever gave. I said, really? And she said, yeah, I mean, you're always good, you're knowledgeable, but today you felt more honest. You didn't feel like you were holding things back, and I appreciated you just being straight about things. And I always remember that from that standpoint of people aren't looking for us to say the nice things all the time. They're looking for us to just be ourselves, to be genuine, to be authentic, and to trust others, right, to work with us. And so to me, that was that sense of don't try to put on the mask of what you're supposed to be, because you'll never live up to that. But present yourself for who you are, and hopefully it's a fit there, and if not, you do something else. So I don't know if that exactly asked the question, but that's kind of what I thought through. When I got to NASA, the first 2 years, I was the quietest person you ever knew. And it was deliberate.
Well, that changed.
I learned if you don't say anything, people assume you know something, I thought. And then you had to change. You're right. Absolutely.
Okay. Well, you know what? We're gonna hop into a commercial break at this time, Ed. Heather, when we come back, I'm really curious that if you were to build a model, what kind of model it would be, because Ed would build model rockets. That's all he's got. He's just got rockets all over his house. So I'm excited to hear what your story is. Be back in 2.
We'll get back to the rest of the episode in just a moment. But first, a word from our presenting sponsor, TaleoConnects.com. As a manager, you know how important it is to solve issues right the first time. If you don't, you risk wasting precious time, money, and resources on things that could make the problem even worse. That is why at Taleo, we start by getting to the root cause of your specific problem, so that together, we can implement the solution that gets you the results you are looking for the first time. Taleo's unique approach to management consulting and resourcing is focused on building a community of experts that work together to help clients solve complex problems and find success in their businesses. We work collaboratively with you to implement the solution that will solve the root cause of your problem, not just the symptoms of that problem. From management consulting and project management to staff augmentation and resource recruitment, Taleo's trusted team can help you take your organization to the next level. If you're interested in learning more about how Taleo can help you overcome your organization's obstacles and take your business to the next level, visit TaleoConnects.com today.
Okay, well, welcome back. So, Heather, what is the model that you would build? What is it?
That's interesting. That is like kind of thrown me a little bit. I'm trying to think. I think of my other passions in life is out being on the lake and on the water and all those sorts of things. So a model that I would love to be some sort of boat that I can just enjoy, and I say whether it's a paddle boat or a motorboat or something like that. Those are the things I would be designing, like what could go faster, what could be more efficient, what could keep me upright and all that kind of stuff, or what could be environmentally friendly.
Yes,
that would be.
Well, we're always environmentally friendly. That's why I only buy bottles of wine instead of getting single glasses. So that's the trick for me. So
I
it's
heard you
interesting.
get cases.
Well,
I heard you get cases. Yeah.
Yeah. That part is also true. So yes, thank you. So it's interesting how you described your model and how you needed the stability and to be upright. And it's funny how when we explain things that matter to us, how much it really shows up in who we are as a person. And And for you, Heather, you play a lot of different roles. We talked a little bit about it earlier on, but you're an athlete, you're a spouse of an athlete, you're a mother of athletes, and then you're a coach of athletes. And I would really like for us to kind of peer into the life of Heather Nedohin in when you're playing these different roles, how do you show up differently in order to make sure that those around you are successful?
I think listening, that's been the key to really showing up, is really understanding individual differences. From, specifically my two girls are completely different individuals. My oldest daughter is a field lacrosse player in Michigan, not a curler. And she struggled a little bit with, my parents are curlers, I should be curlers. And we're like, no, hun, follow what your journey, what you love to do. And she is a contact player. And so she, followed her journey, and, we're so proud of her because she found her passion and what makes her go, right? It's awesome. And then my youngest daughter, Alyssa, is a curler, but we've had to deal with concussions when she was younger. And so her journey has been a little bit differently because we couldn't go into contact sport, even though she loved to do that. So I think for me, my roles, whether it's being a mom, a coach, or a wife, is understanding individual differences and what makes that person become the best that they can be, and then setting up the tools and the opportunities around them for them to excel. And I am actually intrigued by figuring out how everyone is different. And when I was coaching Team Canada, we were in the Calgary bubble for just over 2 months. And when you're together for that extended period of time, you really get to know each other from morning, afternoon, nights. How do everyone operate? When do you like to speak? When not to speak? How do you, are you visual? Are you this? And really understanding your athletes, but getting to know your athletes and what makes them, why are they not performing? Well, did you know that their grandma passed away? Right? Did you know their background? And I think that's in life when as I manage the Sherwood Park Curling Club, and I have 800 members at my club, and I have, at times over 100 volunteers. When you get to know them and they have that sense of belonging and they have that commitment, it's really on a personal level, and getting to know them, and then, as I said, supplying them with the tools and the instruments to make them better is exceptional. Now, as a mom, I know nothing. Right? I need to surround my daughters with the tools that they can, even though I might say something, it's somebody else needs to say it. So, we have unbelievable mental trainers that the girls work with, that they feel safe around, they feel comfortable with, and they can excel.
I'm wondering, are you at the point where you enjoy the coaching and the development of others as much, more than individually being an athlete, or what's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, great question. I know it's extremely hard for me to be standing behind the bench watching the games unfold in front of me. The athlete in me, I have to move. I want to see the lines. I'm doing all this kind of stuff. But in my stage of life, I have to say, yes, I enjoy to see the success of others right now, because I know for myself what it takes to be elite and to be the Olympian, and that's only the standard within myself that I enjoy to play. And I can't commit that right now. And so for me to go perform at 80% is unacceptable. But for me to go and arrive as a coach and help athletes perform to their best potential, I feel I've succeeded. So I am at that stage. The thing about our sport, though, I could go back to it. And I've had people say, oh, Heather, you show up at 80% and you're outplaying 80% of the field. But the passion, the enjoyment that I get being there for my daughters succeeds me being there as an athlete.
Actually, I think it's a really interesting observation. But first off, before I continue that, congratulations on being, such a contributor not only to your family and your children's future journeys, but also to Team Canada. So thank you for that. But I do think it's an interesting observation that we show up our best, we perform at our best when we're truly enjoying ourselves. So yes, you could go and you could go back into curling, and you would probably be in the top percentile still, but it wouldn't be your best because you're not enjoying it to the same level of which you are as a coach and contributor in that regards. So I guess I'm putting it out there to challenge our audience and ourselves on, are we doing what we enjoy the most that produces our greatest success? So you can't do that every day. No, you can't do it every day. But are you doing it the majority of your day? Are you in the environment that's going to make you the most successful? Because I see people grumpy all day long, and I think to myself, what a long, painful life that is. So how do I help them? How do we give them the tools to change that moment, that time for them? Ed, over to you.
Yeah, no, I was asked by people when I was at NASA, what does it take to work on this team? Well, who do you hire? And I always say, very generally, I look for two things. One, people who are passionately crazy, who want to work here, want to do the work, are going to be excited about it, no matter what's going on. And second of all, somebody who has a capability. It doesn't have to be what they're even interviewing for, but a capability that they can take to the next level. So I'm a believer in that whole kind of, the enthusiasm, as essential. Now, I've also been told many times, how come you're smiling all the time? Or why are you happy? Or all these kinds of things. But I think that enthusiasm, it is important, because I think, I would always tell people when they start at NASA, remember how you feel today on day one, which is usually they're thrilled, their parents are thrilled, everyone's thrilled, because you're going to end up working for a lot of people, or for some people you don't like and who don't like you. You're going to have bad days. You're going to have a lot of, it's not, rainbows and dragons and all kinds of fun stuff happening. There's a lot of hard work, there's difficulties. So can you tap back into why I'm here? There was a period of times when I was at NASA when I was saying, I gotta leave, but I gave myself the year, and then things turned around. So I think the enjoyment is important, because no matter what you do, you're going to be facing difficulties, challenges, problems, heat-seeking missiles. And at the core, if you appreciate what you're doing it and who you're doing it with, and the fact you're contributing something to a community, I think that makes it work. Yeah. I mean, you're passionate all the time, Laurel. I've never seen you not passionate. So how do you get passionate? How do you stay there? People must get angry with you. How do you stay positive?
I would, yeah, it's a good question. I am a glass half full in almost every situation. And the only times in my opinion that I'm not able to get there is when the negativity starts to even consume my energy. Yeah. And so I always have to step away and be like, what is making me so un-Laurel today? Un-Po, right? Like what is causing that?
Un-Laurel.
Yeah. Un-Laurel. Yeah. And honestly, for the most part, is I've let other people's energy impact how I would normally show up. And I don't like that. I like my positivity. I like the energy that I bring and contribute in a group setting for. And I like to be impactful. And the second that those blockers show up, that's where I feel like not only am I letting the group down, but I'm letting myself down. So I really do limit the interactions in those areas. And people would say, well, how can you do that? You know, you consult for a lot of organizations. You're right. But I get to also choose who I do my work for. And I now choose to be in environments that are positive and that they've brought me in for the right reasons.
One
and
of
so
the
that
things
kind of
that, oh, go ahead.
Oh, I was
No, I
just
think that,
yeah. Go ahead, Heather.
sorry, I was just going to add, when your cup is not full, I think that's when self-reflection and time to really, I think in society for sometimes we forget about me, right? Like, oh, I'm not going to go work out. I'm not going to read this book. I got too many things to do. But we need to reinvest in ourselves to be better for those that are around us. And sometimes, you know, guess what? The dishes don't get done because I went to yoga in the morning and took time to care for me. And your lunch isn't as good as it should be, but you're going to be okay today because mom took time for herself. And those self-reflection fill up your own cup times where, you know, personally with it's going for a walk with your dog, with your girlfriend, or, you know, those moments are critical for when you become that leader coming forward to wherever that environment is, because your cup comes in that little bit more full and that energy spills off into your surroundings and then it all raises up. Right. So I know for myself personally, when we were in that bubble and it was only the 5 of us, I went on a yoga challenge. Every day I took the breathe yoga challenge with, you know, and it made me better. And then it made my teammates better. And the surrounding was better. So taking time for yourself when you feel like there's no time is the best time to do it.
Yeah,
That's probably the greatest trigger to.
I'm sorry, I keep stepping on both of you. I'm remembering though something that Jessica Fox, who we spoke to recently, said that I think is connected with I'm hearing what we're talking about is make sure, I think it was the number one thing in the movie business, that there's so much failure, right? I think 11 out of every 12 films will fail. So what you have to do for a career, you have to surround yourself with people who not only support you, but support your ideas. That they don't try to change it. They try to work with you in positive ways. So.
Heather, when we kind of do the reflection on what we've talked about here today, is there one pivotal moment, and I know there's probably many, but is there one or two that you look back upon with great pride and say that gave me such joy? Are there any spots that stick out for you? And yes, Ed, I'll be asking you the same question in a moment.
I think for me, I've been a part of several successful teams along the way, you know, and that's wonderful. But I think my journey of friendships and understanding individual differences to how the 4 or the 5 or the core of us could respond together and make great things happen, whether that was within sports or at work. That's to me is the pivotal thing, is really surrounding myself with individuals that respect myself, the way I lead, and we just feed off of each other to make really great things happen. And for me, I always want to know who will be there in the next 15 or 20 or 25 years around my campfire, and who's going to be my long-term friendships that I want to spend my quality time with to make great things happen.
It's funny. My business partner often says, I enjoy all of our clients because I would enjoy going for lunch with them any single time. And I think that's a pretty powerful statement, because that means that we're with the right clients and they're with the right consulting firm. I think it says a lot about how we choose who we want to be successful around. So that's a great observation, Heather. Ed, what are your thoughts on your pivotal moments?
Yeah, I mean, I realized I spent most of my life in the learning business. I was brought on board to teach, to consult, to work with individuals. And so I saw them, and at Columbia, I still do that. So I see them at time 1, which is where they enter the program. And then you see them time 2 and beyond. And to me, there are two moments that I love. I love when you meet that first person and they're nervous, they're excited, they're anticipatory, they want so much. And then with many of these people, you see them at a point further down where they're doing such amazing things. And for me, I feel a personal amount of pride that I was a part of it. And so that time one, time two is always the thing that sticks out. And I've seen, man, at NASA, it was close to 40 years from when I started. So I've seen people who I started at the very beginning figuring things out. And now they're CEOs and they're executives and they're on to major things. And I remember both points. And that to me is, I think, makes things special.
Absolutely. Speaking of special and how you and Heather have helped people throughout their careers and their futures, Heather, when you look at maybe somebody in our audience is a young athlete or has a young athlete that wants to perform at an Olympic level, doesn't matter the sport, what are your words of wisdom for them? What are the steps that you would recommend they take and help them in the viewing of their journey?
I think you should I use the constant and never ending improvement. So whether I had was on my water bottle, it was on my journals, it was on it, just always keep improving. And if it's little increments and I read a ton of books on all these different topics, and whether it's different athletes and such, but just keep your mind open to possibilities, understanding that it's going to be tough. There's going to be several failures along the way, but how are you going to respond the next day around, with your peeps, and just enjoy the process, right? Like, just embrace it, and because there's going to be so many losses along the way or failures or whatever, but just rise to it and get out of bed the next morning and say, how do I make myself better? Let's improve.
The little engine that could, right? Yeah. That's amazing.
I love that.
I love it.
Have you written
too.
a book yet on that, or that would be a great title for your book? No.
You know why she's laughing, Ed? You know why she's laughing is because I asked her, if she's written a book, and she said, no, that's not what I do. I says, well, you don't have to be the one to do it, but it is who you are, right? And there's a difference between what I do versus who I am. And I think, Heather, the information that you can share and the opportunities that would help to contribute to people's future successes, that's all sitting right in front of Ed and I right now. So thank you.
I've got one more question for Heather, if I can do that. Do we have time,
You bet.
Laurel? Or?
Yes, one more question.
So, as an outstanding coach, coaching is something that more and more is important for all organizations. What is it that makes you a successful coach? What is the thing that you think is most important for when it works well that you do for preparing yourself and for others?
I think listening, absolutely, to your athletes. I really do. Getting to know your athletes and what makes them work. And then obviously in the sporting world, knowing, strategically your oppositions and doing your homework. But the biggest thing, as I'm just starting to become a coach, like I say that as a skip in my position. I think I was coaching my teammates along the way without the coach title role. And that's like your quarterbacks, you're this or that on their team. You're leading, you're coaching along the way as such. But as I, let go of my role as a player and strictly into a coach, it's just, again, learning what makes them learn. And, I can say it one way to athlete, and it won't work for the other. And reframing it, visually stimulating, it's just so interesting. And spending time with your athletes, in my sport, I find it's easier because there's 4 players. I can't imagine being a coach of a football team or a hockey team or a basketball team when there's so many more players coming in and out and everything. So, I think that's the key, is really learning your athletes on the field or on the ice, but really what's happening behind the scenes is just as impactful as well. To know, so when they show up, why they showed up and how they showed up is the key to allowing me to get them to get to the next step.
Yeah, and we hear a lot about listening, and so I always enjoy that. It's important to listen, but it's just as important to observe. So I heard you say listening, but yet a lot of the things you were talking about is observing, right? Like you're showing that you're paying attention to the person and their behaviors, their characteristics, what drives them. And it isn't, Bob can say, well, I listened the entire time and they never said that once. You're right, they didn't. But how was their body language? What did their face look like? All of those things really, really do impact the discussion. And I heard you talk about that in full view for sure. Yeah. So we do have one last question for you, which is at the end of the day, what is your superpower? What is it that makes you special, makes Heather Nedohin the fantastic woman that we've been able to talk with for the last 45 minutes? And how do you water that power? How do you water that capability?
I'm a multitasker, and I think that can be good and bad. But being able, as a mother, as a coach, working and all this sorts of stuff, being able to manage the house the family is very important to me. So multitasking is key, and to that. And just, again, I think I'm always striving to be better and recognizing that, in each of my roles that I hope to, you hope to strive for excellence all the time, but just always learning, and always looking for mentors that can help me, and seeking support when my cup isn't full, and being, self-awareness about it. So those are a lot of things there, but I think the key to that is, just being okay with who I am in my shell.
Well, for sure, and for sure that's an easy one for me to connect with, because I often will have to re-energize my cup, and I have to be really comfortable in who I am, because I'm a lot of personality for a lot of people. A girlfriend, actually, Ed, you'll love it. Maybe I'll put it on our next podcast. She gave me this shirt that says, "I'm not for everybody." Yeah, you're right. You're not. Good. I'm not That's for good. Everybody, and I'm really okay with that, right? Like I am hot damn okay with that. And so, Heather, I really value that you can be really open and upfront, that you have to take time for yourself, and you have to be very self-aware when you're not doing your best, that it's still okay that you're not doing your best, but you need your recharge, right? That's kind of what I heard you say there. Yeah. Ed, this has been a great
again,
episode.
I go back to can I think that says it all. Constant and never-ending improvement. To me, that's the goal. I mean, I think the best performers, the best leaders, the best teams, the best athletes, they don't expect things to just magically happen or to be perfect, but they're looking to continuously get better, to learn, to improve. We didn't get what we wanted this year. We start again next year. And how do you take it that level? And to me, I think that sounds like what you bring as a coach, as a leader, and as a mother, right? As you want people to be able to deal with the wins, but be prepared to know that you have to shift and adapt and move forward. Never-ending progress.
From now on, Ed, every time we have a conversation, I'm going to say, "Can I?"
And I'm going to say, "Don't be on Laurel."
Oh, that's a good answer.
Do be on Laurel.
I like it.
Yeah.
Yes. I like that, actually. Yeah. Don't be on Laurel. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'll try to manage that going forward. So for me, a couple of things that I've learned from the podcast, just for I try to do it, but I don't think it's always as prevalent as it could be, which is I'm gonna. I always tell others, give yourself a little bit of grace here. But I forget to give that to myself in some situations where I'm like, wow, I really missed the mark on that one. And I think that maybe I should start wearing my shirt a little more often that says I'm not for everybody, because then the grace, it just shows up. It just shows up. So that kind of excites me to kind of allow myself to be okay in that environment for sure. Ed, any last thoughts that you have outside of Kenai?
Yeah, I think one of the things that was interesting is the conversation, I think, has been about working with others, collaborating, being part of a team, and the listening that goes with that. And I do a lot of work on the future of work. And what I think we're at is where we're going is that need for collaboration and listening. 10 years ago, the leadership models, and I think the coaching models, was that you had the expertise, you told people. And that doesn't work anymore. And that to me is the biggest shift. You have to be able to embrace, to work with people where they're located, the different contexts. And so I think that's what I've gotten heavily out of today's discussion with Heather, is being a coach who goes where the people are and working with them, as opposed to forcing them into a certain direction that we think is right.
It's really interesting that you say that that model doesn't work anymore, and yet it's prevalent every single day, Ed. And I want to scream it from the rooftops. Directing people and telling them what to do is not going to make them do it better. Please, no. I repeat it. I'll repeat it over and over and over again. You're never going to be successful as a leader and as a contributor if that happens, ever. Yeah. I don't know why people can't see that.
Because that was the model for the previous 100 years. You learn certain things. We teach. We're in the project management business. For decades, we've taught project managers your number one thing is to control things, control people, control what they say. So now you're telling people in a changing, dynamic world that you have to do it a different way. It's hard to do things differently. I think that's what it comes down to. But
And I just wanted to, Heather, let you know that Ed has a book coming out in August called The Smart Mission, and it's all about teams and the people side of things. So it will be coming out August 2nd, and we will be sending you a copy of that book, awesome. Just to thank you for contributing and participating on our podcast today, because it really was a true enjoyable experience for us.
Well, thank you. I appreciate the opportunity to do that and join you guys today.
Yeah, thank you so much, Heather. Very impressive. Yeah.
Take care, Heather. It was a pleasure, and I know we'll be having you back.
Thanks for listening to the Mission Driven Leader podcast, presented by TaleoConnects.com. Be sure to subscribe to the podcast and leave a review wherever you listen to the show. Production of the podcast is by @Heart Creative and can be found at @heartcreative.com.